Well, interesting news today because lots of deep dives into rabbit holes which take us to surprising places. I've been looking at what's been going on under the surface in Ukraine, and the Kyiv Independent came up with this very interesting article, which I paid attention to. It said Clooney Foundation for Justice brings alleged Russian crimes to German prosecutors. Now, I also look at a huge amount of information and particularly films taken at the time of the war on the Eastern Front. And I found something, I can't call it black humor, but there's something just wrong in this, that Russian crimes should be taken to German courts. But anyway, let's follow it through. What was the Clooney Foundation for Justice? What was the report? It said over the past week, the Clooney Foundation for Justice, a non-government organisation founded by Amal and George Clooney, filed 3 cases with German federal prosecutors to investigate crime committed by the Russian forces in Ukraine. And it went on to say that the Kharkiv Oblast case is filed jointly with Truth Hounds, a Ukrainian NGO investigating atrocities committed by Russian forces. And that links into another thing called the docket, which I haven't got time to do, but these are all under the surface networks, NGOs, government agencies that here are supposedly rooting out the war crimes of the Russians. But if we go to the Clooney Foundation for Justice website, very, very glossy. I haven't run the sound on this, but the lovely couple are working for human rights. Amal herself is a highly qualified barrister, so she's clearly doing a lot of good work across the world in human rights. But my question's here about what's actually happening with this organisation in Ukraine. But you get an idea of the organisation. It says their mission is to provide free legal support to victims of human rights abuses in over 40 countries around the world. It wages justice to create a world where human rights are protected and no one is above the law. I couldn't find anything to do with Israel on this particular site, but it was a relatively short visit, so I may have missed it. But I always look at the board. Here are the lovely couple, Amal and George Clooney. And then if we have a look at some of the other directors, the board directors, it gets interesting for me because we've got Zani Minton-Beddoes. She's editor-in-chief of The Economist. We've got a gynecologist. We've got the president and vice chair of Microsoft. We've got creative agency, and we've got more legal people. And I'll just bring this one in. We've also got the president of the Ford Foundation, and this is where I begin to get nervous. What are we dealing with? Are we dealing with philanthropy or are we dealing with massive global corporations? But we've also got a Professor Philip Webb, another barrister. So not surprisingly, a lot of law people, as you would expect. I'm just gently asking questions about how the other interests work. But if we follow the main lady through, I was really interested to see that the government has already been using her. This is back from the UK's Special Envoy for Media Freedom from April 2019, September 2020. Let's just bring in the big red arrow. It says as a barrister, she specialises in international law and human rights. She provides a voice to governments. She's very highly ranked. But she also served as a senior advisor to Kofi Annan when he was the UN's envoy on Syria, as counsel to the UN's inquiry on the use of armed drones. And then she was appointed to the UK Attorney General's expert panel. So this is a lady who is able to move through the legal system, the government system, but with a private organisation which is working to do good work, apparently in Ukraine, to get these cases to German courts to try the Russians. I don't know. I feel uncomfortable. But if we follow it through, Ms. Clooney herself was also working some time ago with Lord Neuberger on the Media Freedom Legal Panel. And so this is reported on the government website. There was some detail here. The panel will convene for the first time at the global conference to defend media freedom. So this is a bit more of don't worry, we've got it all under control. You just stay at home and relax. We'll bring in another quote from Jeremy Hunt. He said, stemming the tide of violence against journalists requires political will, diplomatic pressure, and a legal framework to support countries to improve. Britain doesn't need to improve, but we're going to help other countries. The independent high-level panel of experts consists of the best legal minds from across the globe. How were they chosen, I wonder? Together, they'll develop and promote legal mechanisms to help prevent and reverse media abuses. And if I just bring in another one here, should come in. Here's Amal Clooney herself. The high-level panel of legal experts brings together leading international experts on media freedom, including judges, lawyers, academics from all over the world. I look forward to working alongside them to develop advanced legal frameworks that can protect media freedom around the world. So this all looks lovely. The second thing I looked at after the board was our partners. And let's just pop this up on screen because then it gets very interesting, because the top one is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but we've also got the Ford Foundation, and we've also got Microsoft. So my question as a relatively ill-informed member of the British public is just, what are these people doing and what are their interests? And are they really government or big business? How does this system work? Because it looks very murky to me. But remember, these have the power to try and call the Russians into court for war crimes. However, we have other war crimes taking place around the world, and those people are not being called in. So is this bias, or is it just a system that doesn't work properly? I'll leave that question for the audience today.
You got some more?
Sorry, I have, Mike. Yes, sorry, I can resist this. This is the Global Conference for Media Freedom, which I mentioned. And this is just a really short comment here, because it's got Canada and UK involved. So they're apparently rooting for world media freedom. And I have to ask, what could possibly go wrong? And my research has just touched me on this. I'm going to call it Twitter. X is a bit complicated for me. So we were looking at the Twitter page, and let's bring in an arrow so you can see what I saw. Well, Robert Peston was following various things, an Estonian blogger. And this one caught my eye here. Ukrainian patriot, advisor to the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, founder of the Institute of the Future, official enemy of Russian propaganda. So that sounded like a good little organization. And I just got two images here: Visions for Democracy, a support report, and NDI expert workshops on the future of democracy. So people connected with Ukraine are working to get their form of democracy worldwide. Sounds a slightly dubious scheme to me. People dedicated to the long view. For over 50 years, we've been helping leaders understand their urgent challenges with an eye for future outcomes, diverse minds, better possibilities. So again, I'm going to leave the audience to think about this, but I didn't really feel very comfortable with these organizations and their ultimate agenda.